Well, with all the stuff going on down at OU, and yes, whether you guys like it or not, I am going to talk about it. I don't care if it's got anything to do with the sports or not. I think it does. I think it's got a lot to do with sports. But whether you think it does or not, I'm still going to talk about it. And I'm going to try to give you a reason why right now, and that comes in the that comes in the form of Desmond Mason, who joins us now on the Little Caesars Hot and Ready Hotline, and he'll be in here tomorrow, I'm assuming. But you know, given the prevalence and relevance of this story, you've had, I'm sure, many different situations quite like this whenever you were at Oklahoma State, have you not?
Yeah, man. Not just that. In back home in high school.
Sure.
Through college. Yeah, man. It's unfortunate. You make the assumption that in society we're so far past, what's going on down in Norman right now, and it's hard to put everybody in the same box because everybody doesn't think that way. But this is one of those situations now that's national news. It's just a black eye, not just on the university, but on this state as a whole. And, yeah, man, it's unfortunate, but, I don't want to say ironically, I had my junior year in college, I had a similar run-in from a racist standpoint with the exact same fraternity in Stillwater.
So it's not just sometimes it might not just be because I think the perception was whenever I told people I was going to have you on, there were a lot of OU fans out there going, "Oh, so you're going to bring on an Oklahoma State guy, to tell us how bad OU is." But your point, and I think by this story you're going to tell, your point isn't that it's OU. Your point is that you've had a run in with this particular fraternity.
Yeah, no, it's not. Again, I'm not here to bash. To me, it's not about a school. It's about a situation, and again, in this community and culture and the society today, I mean, the world has changed so much. You just assume that something like this wouldn't happen. You know that these things do happen, but when they kind of strike home, being so close, I don't care where it was, it's hard to swallow. And for me, when I was in college, my junior year, I was at a party. And the part about it is that a friend of mine was at SAE, and he invited me to the party. So, and he's a good friend. And so I go to this party and with, a few other people, and get inside. It's a pretty packed house. And, I walk in and, this kid kind of bumps me, but he was drunk, and, I let it slide. And then, he's got a couple boys with him, and he bumped me a second time. And I said, I just told him to watch out, man. You keep bumping into me. And he turned around and just got like he was about to beat me up. And we're in this house, and I'd already identified it's this massive Confederate flag in the living room right when you walk in directly to the right. So I told him, like, look, man, I ain't here to cause trouble. But if you want trouble, I got trouble. And so he's like, we can just go outside. And so I walked outside. I walked out. I got to about the street and turned around, and there was probably 10 guys behind me. And I said, it's like that. And he's like, yeah, it's like that. And you weren't, we didn't want you here anyway. So I left, called a couple teammates. Joe Atkins was one of them. Adrian Peterson was the other. And I said, look, man, I'm over in this situation. Where you guys at? And so they ended up meeting up with me. And it all blew over at the end of the day. But, you walk in, you're thinking, okay, life has changed. And you got this massive Confederate flag and these guys and they're a-holes and, they're all wasted drunk. And, I remember looking at the situation like, we didn't want you here anyway. I'm just like, seriously? I mean, that's what we had. It's a college party. And so when I saw this, and again, ironically, these kids were in the same place I was Saturday night. So, and this is what's the result, and a lot of them were drunk. But, I just never would expect, especially with kids so young, I just never would expect that, that's what's going on still today. And I know some people on that bus that didn't want to be there, didn't sing one word, didn't like what they heard. But, the ones that did, they make everybody look bad.
Can you give this might be tough for you. I don't know. Can you give some sort of way, some sort of emotion that you feel in these situations? I want you to put us in the shoes of you in those spots. I don't know how that makes you feel, Desmond, and a lot of other white men, white women too, obviously, don't know either. That hits you in your core. How can you explain it?
And so I have to say this. I want to say this before I start making that explanation. Explaining is that, it's not tolerated on either side, not the initial or the backlash. It's not tolerated either way. There's reverse racism that goes on. I'm from a area where it's all black. My middle school was basically all black because the neighborhood was so bad that the parents would take their kids out of 6th grade, put them in private school for a year, and then we would all go back to 7th grade and 8th grade a year because those schools were on the better side of town. But you get reverse racism. You get, the African-American community that have a certain feel toward, the white community and vice versa, and not just black and white. There's all types of racism and discrimination. But it's not tolerated anywhere across the board. I don't care if someone ticked you off and you lashed back out and responded to it. It's still not tolerated. That makes you no better than them. But the feeling for me is, it's a cultural thing. It's very cultural. And in our culture, in African-American culture, there's some things that we do that don't help the cause. There's some things that go on that don't help the cause, in eradicating this. But, man, it's a harsh feeling to hear somebody say it, and maybe they don't hear you hear them say it. It's a harsh feeling to see something like this go on. I mean, it does. It's very cultural. It takes you back. You saw so many stories and heard so many stories, and my grandmother told a lot of stories about when, she couldn't go to a certain bathroom or drink out of a certain water fountain or, again, she was part of that era. And the stories you hear, just like, you just can't fathom that those stories happen. Like seriously, they told you, they made you eat in the back in a room by yourself. You couldn't go into the same bathroom. You had to go into an outhouse in the back. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. But that was the truth. And when you still see it happening today, when you feel like there's progress and you still see it happening today, and this is my opinion, if kids are doing this at 18, 19, 20, 21, that's home. Something's not going right at home. I mean, my kids are biracial. I got a couple of biracial nephews and nieces, and I've seen all types of relationships of all types and all sorts, and those relationships are fine. But there's still racism here, and but man, it really, I'm so detached from living in that world when it was really going on publicly like that. But it hurts, to have to just see it and deal with it in our society today, and just makes you think, we thought we came so far, and then this is still happening in the next generations of our kids.
Des, you went to high school in Waxahachie, as you talked about before. I mean, you grew up in that area. So for you, going to Oklahoma State, I mean, you grew up around racism, so it wasn't as big a deal for you. You played in Oklahoma City as a pro. How many times do you hear from guys either in college or as a pro that maybe didn't grew up in the North somewhere where it wasn't as prevalent, where they didn't hear the N-word, thrown around by white people as often? How many times do you hear people say, man, Oklahoma is a backwards place, that don't even know about this place? And do you think this affects, in a way, Zach and I talked about this, I mean, if you're a big-time recruit from Michigan or something, are you looking at Oklahoma now in a different light? Or if you're a free agent in the NBA, are you looking at OKC differently now?
Yeah, well, let's I want to be clear on this one, is that, you never get used to that.
Sure.
If it was part of your life every day, you don't get used to it. But from afar, Northerners, West Coast, East Coast, up north, the perception is that's what the, Southern Midwest and the South is about anyway. And when you don't hear anything for a long time, you think, well, maybe it is getting better. From afar, it's just kind of, but as soon as something like this happens, everybody go, I told you so. That's what they do. You can't, they just literally just box you in and say that's what they do. Not knowing that a lot of these are isolated situations, and a lot of them, like this one, has alcohol in play and all these types of things. But this doesn't help anything for places like Texas and Oklahoma, and it just doesn't help. When you have a situation like this. So if I was an NBA player and I was a free agent and I had some options, and Oklahoma City was one of those options, and I heard this, and then I started seeing these back and forth rants of racism, and I'm sure the social media world is going to light up like crazy, and everybody's going to have an opinion, and everybody's going to open their mouth as if they know, and it's going to make that situation, if I had to choose between Oklahoma City and another place, and it was a winning team and the money was right, I would choose another place because I'm like, I'm not taking my kids down there to deal with that. But it's just a perception. You don't know everything that's going on. You're watching from afar. And so, again, it doesn't help anybody anywhere, you know, and it makes the state as a whole look bad. Everybody's going to have an opinion. And they're entitled to their opinion. But there's going to be some people that mouth off that is going to make it worse than it already is.
And for the record, I'm not saying there's not racism in other places. I want to throw that out there. It's just the perception of the South. I mean, Donald Sterling was in L.A. and he was a racist, but people don't think of L.A. as a, you know, as like they think
of it
about
more
the South.
progressive,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, no doubt. Desmond Mason with us on 107.7 The Franchise. Last one I got for you. How old are your kids?
9 and 5.
And have you broached this subject with either or both of them, and if so, how?
The way we deal with our kids, man, is that, you know, our kids understand that, you know, they're part mom and they're part dad. And they know they can visually see the difference. And as my daughter gets older, but, you know, she's 9 and she's very, very smart. But she's never asked because it doesn't seem different to her. You know, we let her know how special she is, and the same with our son as he continues to grow up. But, you know, it doesn't seem different to her. It's just there's his mom and his dad, and that's it. And she's part of each, and that's all that matters right now. I think if she gets older, you know, the conversation will come up. She's going to understand that she's a little bit different visually and some things. But at the end of the day, I hope as she gets older that that's not an issue, you know, and it's not a big conversation that we have to have because it's not a big issue. And so right now, her job is to be a kid and hang with her friends and, you know, life is life and be happy and not stress too much over things like this. Her job is not to try to cipher through who she is, you know, her ethnic background, where that stands in our country and society in general and in this community. And that's not her responsibility right now. Her responsibility is just to be a 9-year-old and live. That is it.
Good talking to you, buddy. Thanks for popping on.
Absolutely, man. You guys have a great day.
Likewise, buddy. Desmond Mason on the Little Caesars Hot and Ready hotline.